Welcome to session 3 of t-shirt memory quilt making, my method. And today we're going to add sashing to the blocks that you've made. From the last session, you should have all of your t-shirts now stabilized, cut, and condensed into this stack of blocks, 30 blocks for a queen size. So I showed you how to combine some small graphics into one square. I include an embroidery block with my quilts with the price. This customer wants 2 actually. The other one I haven't finished yet. It's a scripture, but she wanted her name. The monogram came from a shirt, a hoodie, I think. I also embroider a label with the recipient's name, my name, and the year that the quilt was completed. So now today what we're going to do is work on sashing. Sashing is just like window sashing, the wood that goes around the window pane. So imagine this is the window pane, and there will be sashing fabric on either side, top and bottom. So right now I'm concentrating on the sides. That's the first thing I do. So I went fabric shopping. And I think I've shown you the fabrics before. Cleared them with the customer that she was pleased with all of them. One she didn't like, I removed it. I also had some pieces from previous quilts I've done, even small pieces like this. I'm very frugal. Even small pieces like this can be utilized in another quilt. So I cut, what you're going to need today of your fabric, of course, your cutting mat, your template, and I'm using a 3-inch wide template, which makes the sashing about 2 inches wide, 2.5 more or less. You can use it wider if you like, if you want the quilt wider, narrower if you like it narrower. You can double it and put 2 of these strips in between the blocks. Everything is very flexible. You'll need your rotary cutter and a pair of scissors. So here are my strips. I've already cut them. I cut them, if I have 18 inches of the fabric, I cut them 18 inches long. That, of course, is longer than the block. But when I sew it on, I'll trim the excess, and this I'll use on the horizontal sashing, which we'll do next. Some of the fabrics were a yard, so I just cut them 36 inches, and after I sew it onto the block, I will trim the excess and use it either on another block or horizontal sashing. I know the question is going to come up, how much yardage it takes. And the answer is, I can't really tell you. It varies greatly by size, by pattern, how you're going to do it. If, for instance, you choose to do 2 rows of sashing instead of 1 between the blocks, it's going to take more. Sometimes I use sheets. Sheets are wonderful. I frequent thrift stores. We have a lot of them here in North Carolina, South Carolina. A lot of older people, they break up housekeeping, have perfectly good sheets, new sheets practically. So of course I examine them, and if they're appropriate to use, that's what I use. Sometimes for memory quilts, the customer will have a sheet that belonged to the person whose clothing you're using, and they'd like to use those. I don't throw anything away. I save all the small pieces, and there's almost always, for instance, when you're combining the blocks, you can use the small pieces in between there. So I keep everything. If you saw my sewing/craft room, you would agree. So there, you're going to need 36 strips, 30, 1 per block, and then the other side down the quilt, so that's 6 extra. So each strip will have 5 blocks and 6 strips of sashing. So I laid out all my blocks in a pattern on top of my bed. You can do it on the floor where you have a large space. Took a photo, sent it to the customer, and she was pleased except for a couple of switches, which I did. Sent another photo for approval, and she was fine with that. So now we're ready to sew sashing on. So you have your sashing strips and you have your blocks. So I do random. I try not to put too many of the, space them randomly so they're not too many of the same thing together. So you're going to sew one strip onto one side. And when I get done, I'll trim this even, and then this that's left over will be used for the horizontal sashing. So you're going to put it on this side, sew another strip, a block, another strip, another block. And when you get finished with that, you'll have one row of your quilt top all completed. So here's one row. So strip, block, strip, block. Now if you want to put two strips in between to widen it, you can do that. So we have 5 blocks across with 6 strips of sashing. Okay? And you do that then for each row. And when I get done with these, I'll lay them out on the bed again, snap a photo, send it to the customer. I like to keep them updated along the way. Kind of heightens the anticipation, I think. So when you get done with these, then we'll be ready for horizontal sashing. Now it's time to start sewing together the horizontal sashing. So I have some full pieces that I cut. I have all the little scraps that I trimmed off the ends. And I'm going to start sewing these together, end to end. I will alternate the lengths and randomly pick the pieces, trying not to get too many of one pattern together. It's just going to be random. So I just start sewing into a very long strip. Alright, so I went to the machine and I made a long strip. This is going to be longer than I need for one row, but I don't measure. I just sew them together, and then what's left over is the beginning of the next row. So you can see it's random lengths and patterns. And I'm going to just press all those seams, press it all out. Even some of the fabric needs to be pressed. No particular way to press the seams. I don't do it. I don't press them open. Okay, I'm ready to add the horizontal stitching onto one of the rows. I'll start with the bottom since that's what's on top here. And I'm just going to go to the machine. Doesn't matter which end you start on. And you notice I don't pin. I'm going to sew right sides together. I'm going to sew this on the, let's see, this is the bottom edge. Okay. Alright, so I went to the machine. I started sewing here with the right sides together. And now my bottom row of sashing is on the bottom row. So just all random. Now sometimes this is going to happen, and that's okay. Same fabric butts to the itself, but that's all right. So, and you'll see I have just much left. So that's the beginning of my next row of sashing. I just trim that right there, and I'm ready to begin a new row. So I'm going to press this on the wrong side. Pull as I go to the seam apart. Alright, so it's all pressed, and you have all your vertical sashing and Now we're beginning the horizontal. So I'm going to go back to the machine and make some more long strips. To have the next strip sewn together, and I'm going to sew this on the top of this strip row of blocks. Right sides together, stitch it to the top. So there we are. So the bottom row of our quilt has the vertical and horizontal sashing attached now. Now on the other 5 rows, there only needs to be the sashing on the top, unless you want it extra long, and you can put an extra row of sashing in here. If you want to double up, that's fine, but I'm only going to put the sashing on the top, and then the blocks will butt up to this row. When I lay it out, you'll see how it works. So, on to more strips. So I have another strip completed, and I'm going to sew it to the top of the next row, working up from the bottom of the quilt. Doesn't matter, that's just how they were laid out, so that's how I'm doing it. So you can start at the top and work down, but this is the second row from the bottom, and I'm going to stitch the sashing on the top. Alright, so I've laid out all the strips. I had 6 strips, remember, on the bed. Took a picture to show the customer. This is what it looks like before you start quilting. Now here's the bottom strip. Remember, it has sashing at the top and the bottom. All the others have sashing only at the top. And now you can see why. And this is a queen bed, and it's very long, so you might want to make it a little wider if you wanted to use a dust ruffle with it, but the length is good. So that's what it looks like. So you've got your quilt top all ready. The next session will be on making sandwiches. That means putting the top, the batting, and the bottom all together, the lining.